What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Retro Encounter. I'm your host, Josh Curry. With me is the wonderful Chris Gebauer.
Hello.
And speaking of wonderful, we are here to talk about Rogue Legacy, a game that both of us greatly enjoy. I feel like it's safe to say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is kind of like originally it was a PC darling, and then it slowly made its way to everything else, and it's fantastic on the Vita for me. I'm guessing
that's how
where
I
you
play
played
it.
it too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it belongs. It's kind of like for me, Hotline Miami. It's weird. I know that it's great on PC. It just feels right on Vita.
The weirdest thing about Hotline Miami is it actually worked better on the Vita than it did on the PS4, which
Yes, it did,
I
especially the first one.
still never understood. But yeah, Rogue Legacy, I super dabbled with it. Like, by super, I mean for like 5 minutes on the PC, and I was like, this game is fantastic. It absolutely deserves all the praise it's been getting.
Yeah.
But then, being somebody that wants trophies or achievements, I was like, I will wait until it goes to a real system. Um, and then thankfully it came out on PS4 and Vita, and I very quickly dived in and just ran repeated runs through this. Like, I could play it all day.
Yeah, and the best part was it was a summer game. And I remember it coming out and it just not. I remember there was something else that was going to come out in August, but it was one of those things where it's like, I have time. I have time to just get lost in this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things.
And good God, it's great.
It reminds me of Spelunky in that way because
Totally.
it randomizes the levels every time. There's also kind of a structure like Spelunky whereas Spelunky you're going through 1 through 4, 1 through 4, 1 through 4, and moving on to the next, or 1 through 3, 4. Yeah, 4.
Four.
And you're moving on to the next zone. This is you're entering a castle every time, and it's randomized, but you always know like the darkness is below, the forest is most likely to the right. Like, you vaguely
Yeah,
understand
there's a
how the
loose
castle.
understanding.
Right. And so if you're trying to make a runs to try to get to a certain boss or farm out a certain area, you knew the general kind of
Direction
patterns you
to
had
head.
to go. But I
And
guess we
again,
should probably
oh yeah,
step
do it.
back and actually explain what Rogue Legacy is. Um,
So you enter, you are one member of a line, a lineage. You are the first of your ilk. You're the father figure at first, and you have to go through. I guess you could be a woman, although I didn't have that on my first playthrough. And you have to go into this castle, and you are looking for. There's a journal entry from a prince who's claimed he's entered this castle ahead of his siblings because he wants to get a head start to try and find the mythical thing, this elixir of life or
Fountain of
tree
Youth.
of life type thing. Yeah, I don't even remember what it is, but it's this idea of something that will cure all diseases, and he's trying to save his dad.
Right.
And that's the first thing you know, and you start exploring, and you die pretty quickly if you've never played the game before. And then immediately there's a nice little ceremony of you dying, and it's showing all the monsters you've slain up to that point, which is probably not many on your first run. And then they go, okay, which descendant would you like to be? And they give you a few randomized options in these wonderfully done kind of character portraits, and you choose your next hero to play as.
Yeah. Yeah, so
And
how
at its
kind
heart,
of
that's the main loop.
Yeah, and then there's 4 areas. Each area has a final boss. By beating that boss, you essentially get a key to unlock the door in the starting area. And if you beat those 4 bosses, you don't have to do it in one consecutive run. You just have to beat them, and then it's fine. It's unlocked forever. You eventually get to fight the final boss.
Yep.
Yeah, it creates this really interesting loop because I really like. I hate dying, but I really enjoy as soon as I die, all the enemies popping up, and it's really gratifying to. They make them kind of at scale to a certain regard. So like all of a sudden you'll see like, oh yeah, that's right, I beat that huge thing this go, or wow, I
Yep.
beat a lot more things than I thought. And so like that kind of has a cool loop, and then immediately after that, to make sure that you almost start another playthrough, you pick your descendant, which really cool. We'll talk more about
Mm-hmm.
that later. And then you go outside the castle, and there's this whole upgrade system of kind of building a structure next to it. And by building the structure, you you gain like increased health, increased armor, magic points, or you unlock new classes, or you get the abilities to like if you die, you have a 5% chance that you just don't die.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff that you can kind of unlock because as you're going through the castle each time, you're collecting gold, and when you re-enter the castle, all that gold disappears. So you're always trying to get at least enough gold to unlock
The next
something.
whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Could be
Um,
equipment that you found a blueprint for. Could
right.
be, buying the ability to use a rune with the enchantress. And this is all stuff that to what you just said, Josh, you're all unlocking in this kind of metagame of how much gold you're accruing per run.
Right.
And there's
Yeah.
nothing worse than being like, all right, new run. And then you die really quickly and you're like, I can't buy anything.
Yeah. Oh, that
This
hurts
is a
so
waste.
bad because then
I failed.
like at some point when you've played it enough, you actually need a substantial enough like a substantial amount
Yep.
of money. And so if you're vaguely close to getting what you wanted and you're like, well, this really blows because I'm when I re-enter, I think you're allowed to keep like 5 or 10% of your gold. I think it might be 5 when you first start off.
Hmm.
Um,
And then you can improve that perk as
right,
something later on.
right. But that just it hurts so bad because you're like, all right, well, however
It
many minutes I just spent on that last run is complete waste.
was a waste.
Yeah.
Unless you
Um,
somehow beat one of the clowns games. Because if you can do that, you've always won.
I've never beaten a clown game.
Yeah, I neither have I. Okay, I'm glad. It's something I was thinking about while getting ready for this. I was like, I effing hate that clown. I want to punch him in his stupid little face
Let's
because I can't beat his damn game.
so there's a couple like things in the game that are very hard. If you beat the first game or like the whole game, there's a new game plus, which for all intents and purposes,
It's
it's
very
hard.
hard, and it
Um,
keeps going.
right.
It's I think it's endless actually.
Yeah, to my knowledge, you were right. The other is the clown game, which gives you really cool stuff, but to my knowledge, I don't
It's a
remember
mini
ever
game. It's a
beating
randomized mini game.
any of those. I might have at some point,
No,
but I don't remember it.
insane.
Um, and then also when you beat any of the four bosses, if you re-enter their boss structure,
Oh,
there's
the remixed one.
yeah, which are ridiculously difficult. Um, and so there's just I will readily admit when I first played through the game, I never actually beat the game because I enjoyed the loop
Interesting.
so much of I am going to keep going through this tower. I'm just going to collect more stuff. I'm going to try to unlock everything. Try to collect all the runes, collect all the armor, all the weapons. I'm going to repeatedly try against these remixed bosses
Hmm.
and fail. Um,
Yeah, they're rough.
but that kind of loop of just kind of continually doing that, that was what I wanted from this game. Was to a certain regard, I view this as completely fun, no strings attached Castlevania. Because you're in a
I
castle,
really dig that. Yeah,
and
you're
so
going through. You do have to backtrack at times. There are secrets that you can find.
right, it's a slightly watered down version. Um,
Of course,
but
because it's randomized. It's not that
where
kind of hyper precision.
right. But whereas like with Castlevania, there's always this level of tension to it. There's always I need to find this next thing. I need to progress. I need to do this. This is just a very like I have 15 minutes. Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
And I'll do a run. Maybe if I have less, I'll try to rush through or do something crazy. If I have a half an hour, I'm going to go and do a full gold run. And that's this game was never about beating it for me. It was always let's enjoy the journey
What's
every
next?
time.
Yeah.
And so that was getting ready for this. It's like, oh crap, I actually have to beat this.
Finally finish it.
Yeah. So that was a very different kind of way to look at the game. Still fun, but very different.
Totally. I got to say, I really dig that. And we mentioned before Spelunky.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I think very much so. I have to. I mean, I actually didn't get this on the PS Plus. I remember getting this when it came out, but there, in a lot of ways, a lot of those downloadable titles on PS3 and then eventually PS4 really got me into the roguelike genre.
Hmm.
Like specifically, there were some games on Steam and some games way back in the day that were definitely rogue and roguelikes that I played, but in terms of making it a genre that I now look for
Hmm.
and get excited for, like to the point of when Binding of Isaac came out, I was like, oh, I actually got to check this game out. It's going to be a new roguelike. That's awesome. There's this wonderful difficulty curve that most roguelikes I don't think have down that you have in Rogue Legacy, and it's because of the meta of upgrading
Right.
and building up your little, your shopkeeper and all your stats and all the rest of it, is that even when you fail miserably, it doesn't feel like failure. Downwell is an indie that I would kind of put in a similar vein. It's like it's just you had your run. You either did well, you didn't. You had to pause because you had to go to work or your bathroom break or whatever you were doing done. Just saying, it's great on handheld, but uh, it is gentle enough that when you fail spectacularly, it doesn't feel soul crushing.
Right. Yeah, and
Whereas, I mean, outside of boss runs, where you get really close and you lose, really the rage comes from. Well, I would say there isn't as much rage as I would get in most roguelike dungeon crawls. Because there isn't that sense of I've lost everything.
yeah, so I guess I have 2 points about this. One, usually the rage isn't centered on the game, it's more at yourself because
Yeah, exactly.
it
Because
has
you didn't figure out the tell properly. You didn't realize, or you jumped to the wrong side because, yeah.
right, the
Sorry.
controls never get in the way.
Nope.
And that's like a lot of these indie games from like that whole spectrum of time like the controls are so
Design issues
tight.
get in the way.
Like
Yep.
they just when I
The
screw up,
precision is
I
nuts.
screw up. It is my
Yep.
fault, absolutely. And so again, it makes it a little bit easier. And then the other thing is, so my kind of, I'm not even sure if it technically counts as a roguelike, but I always count it as a roguelike, is Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter. And I remember when I played that the first time, and I died, and I was like, "Well, this is weird." I died, and then it made me restart the game. And I remember as a little kid, it really, really confused me, and then it would
Yep.
really, really anger me because there was so much investment to every playthrough, and then when you
Yep.
died, there was like, all right, well now I have another 6, I have another 8 hours that I have to play through.
Yeah, it
Um,
doesn't feel like an equitable trade for your time. You
right,
feel like you lost.
and I still really, really like that game, but the time investment and the risk reward just never felt right. And I think Rogue Legacy specifically really, really nails that. Like I adore Spelunky, but the reward is just that you know the game better and you understand it better. You never
Hmm.
have anything to reinvest.
Yeah,
In
and the
roguelike,
speed with which you can get through the zones. It
right,
really comes down to personal times and
where Rogue
whatnot.
Legacy still has that learning, but you
Yep.
also gain the ability to upgrade it, and that's ultimately what made me just adore Rogue Legacy.
It has a great loop. Again,
Hmm.
we talk about it with a lot of, especially with certain RPGs we've been playing for the last few games of of each month. But the loop is great.
Hmm.
You said it from the get go, but that idea of just going through, collecting treasure, doing random fairy chests, which are usually have blueprints or a rune in them, so there's usually a special item. And they're oftentimes in rooms that are either you have to complete a challenge, like killing everyone there, and a it'll usually be tough, or it'll be some crazy platforming.
Yeah, the worst
And
are take no damage because those rooms are so hard.
they're so hard. You have to just hope you picked the right class and got lucky.
You have the right skills so you can
And
either
there is definitely
fly
a
or
lot of that.
double jump or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Or triple jump later on.
Yeah.
It's my favorite. When I first booted the game back up, I hadn't played it in a while, and well, A, being told how many monsters you've killed in
Yeah.
your game, it actually says that. By the way, 5,600. Well done, sir.
I
Killed a lot of things.
I apparently should have checked to see who was bigger. So
You are. Yeah, you got it. Don't worry. All euphemism included. We're all good. But no, it's just that that curve of figuring out enemy patterns, the tells, understanding that okay, there's actually a secondary ability to
mhm.
that monster that I didn't realize the first 5 times I killed it, and that's why I died. Uh, it's a lot of those arguments that people like myself will use for Dark Souls. Like you said before, it's usually your fault.
Right.
There are rules in place, and what's beautiful about Rogue Legacy is the rules are super simple because it's in that context of just jump, attack, ability button. I mean, yes, there's dashing and then special abilities when you unlock the better version of each class, but really it's a 3-button game.
Yeah.
The dash is a nice bonus because it helps you get around a lot, but that's also comfortably just L and R, so it fit, especially if you're playing on Vita. You can clearly tell we both played on Vita, but it just it's so simple, it's so basic, and then it's just explore, figure it out, understand the nuance, get better.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting better talent wise, there's a good chance you're upgrading your character enough to balance it out. So it
Right.
doesn't
So at some
just
point,
rely on skill, which is what's nice about Rogue Legacy.
right, at some
Because you
point
can
it
over
doesn't matter that you're not good.
no. Whereas most roguelikes, and I think that's kind of what where I was trying to get uh, with this whole idea is that usually it is majority skill based, which is why most people drop out. And which is why the people who don't are obscenely good at the games or at roguelikes
Right.
because they just put in the time.
Yeah, you have to put an absurd amount of hours a lot
Whereas
of
this one,
times.
so much. But Rogue Legacy, I think, really found that sweet balance of yes, you could go the skill route, and there are people who've platinum the game and their trophies that are obscene in terms of how low level you are when you clear everything. Those are the talented people. Those are the people who go Shovel Knight 30 playthroughs. But you also don't have to. You can play it at your own pace, and the leveling system will counter that and kind of ease out the difficulty. So that someone like my brother, who doesn't have a lot of time to play games and doesn't want the frustration of starting again. Like there's a lot of games, especially roguelikes, that he'll start and be like, if I had time, I would love this game, but I don't have the time to be this pissed off. No, it is ridiculous. I know I laugh too, but there's something to that.
Right.
If you don't have the time to be patient and learn, games with those curves, Dark Souls included, are too frustrating.
Right. Yeah, there's and this is something that's become extremely prevalent for me now that I have a child is
Yeah,
I'm fitting in game time in the weirdest times of the day, for very odd lengths of time.
yeah.
Um,
So it better
and
be fun when it happens, right?
right, yeah, it's supposed to be a very, very relaxing time. Whereas when I was younger and I I was like fitting in between parties and like working out or something, it's like, well, I can get
Hmm.
angry because I'm gonna go have fun after this.
Yeah, it's not
You're
my only release.
right, and you when you're looking for just that absolute gratification, sometimes those Dark Souls, we'll just use that as the easy example, that can
Yep,
be so frustrating because the length of time for that reward takes so long.
yep.
And in a lot of ways, it makes the reward so much sweeter when you get there.
Yeah, it's the war of attrition thing, but sometimes your nerves just can't deal with that bullshit.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean, it's just what it is. And I swore on the podcast, and I'm a terrible person, but
good.
it's true. Like, there's just a lot of times with so many games. For most people, we're lucky that we have excuses to play games, and we've made excuses for ourselves, like this awesome podcast, which is for many people who are involved. It's always a great way to go back and play things you missed, or
Yeah,
uh, you know, something you always thought you would get to, but it's hard to make time. So it forces you to make time.
yeah, and I've seen
Like you've got a
myself.
kid and a life, so it's just like that's extra stress. And then I could only imagine playing certain games and dying early on.
Yeah, the stress has never been an issue for me. The bigger problem I have is like The Witcher 3. There's
Hmm.
so much meat there that
Like just in
sometimes,
terms of an hour, yeah,
right, and
investment.
I'll forget what's going on. And there's nothing more frustrating than like I know I'm
Oh,
supposed to know this person, or I know I'm supposed to know what I'm supposed to do next, and I don't remember.
yeah.
And so
The
then
where
you're
was
like,
I
I
that we
should,
all had when you booted up a memory card.
right,
It's like,
I should restart this, and they're like, well, my playtime's at like 20 or 30 hours. Do I really want to start over at this point? And then you're like, it's easier to put in Overwatch or bring it back to the game we're
yeah,
talking
that's
about.
the big one. Overwatch. Yeah,
Play Rogue Legacy because again, this I know where I am at all times.
yeah.
Um,
Because what's also genius about Rogue Legacy and most roguelikes to an extent, but how they did the lineage joke or kind of through line, because
yeah,
it's always the next generation, is that it very much is okay. Now it's this person's story.
yeah, yeah,
Of course, there's no actual written dialogue. It's whatever you're doing in the castle. That what we talked about before about seeing every trophy of everything you killed when your character dies. That's the journey.
right.
How
Yeah,
much treasure you got, and so it's this wonderful actual thing of like, okay, I'm a new person now. Let's
right.
go. Okay, I'm
So
a new person again. Let's go.
it's kind of interesting whenever we do these, like half the games we cover I've played before.
Hmm.
And whenever we do that, you have to start a new game. Actually, into the main menu,
Oh, it's
select new
weird.
game. And for this, it's just like, all right, I am going to play because each time I play is technically a new game.
Yeah.
And so I actually kind of chuckled at that when I first started playing this. Is like, this is kind of nice. I'm not technically restarting, but I am restarting. And it was refreshing compared to something like Final Fantasy Tactics. Because I had played
Sure.
hundreds of hours the first time through, and so like to look at that save every time, like, nope, I am not going to interact with this. I'm going to do this new one that has 2, 3, 4 hours on it. This is really
Right.
depressing, but this is how this podcast works. I need to start a new game, and so again, it's like exactly what you're saying. Each kind of life is a new game. It's a new, fresh start on everything. So, since each time we start, we have to pick a new class, what are some
Hmm.
of your favorite
Do we have
classes?
favorites? I love the barbarian
Solid
just
choice.
as a great, like, especially if I was exploring new zones.
Hmm.
I love the barbarian or the barbarian king.
Hmm.
I think it is such a great just explore, and you can take your hits, learn new enemies, and kind of actually get a feel for patterns instead of getting one shot. In terms of dealing with bosses, my favorite by long shot was the assassin. Just
Really?
high damage, high damage.
So,
Granted, one hit and you're dead pretty much,
yeah.
but I would try. I basically would do, uh, try to be very agile, dodge a lot, but also when I had my windows. So I would usually try and figure out, my patterns with a knight or, oh god, what's the archmage is also
The
a solid
Archmage is
one.
ridiculous, especially in the final boss.
Oh yeah,
He tears
the
it up.
shinobi and the Hokage I loved as well. Actually, I would say I probably did more Hokage than assassin. The spell sword is another one that can get super overpowered. Uh,
I like how you've named
yeah,
all
I
these
would push
classes,
myself
but
the
you have not
bosses.
named my favorite class yet.
Oh really?
I go Lich
Oh, is
King
it?
every time.
I was gonna say, are you gonna go Lich King? It's gonna be either Lich King or the dragon.
The Dragon's
That's what I was gonna go.
fantastic. When I just want to screw around, I absolutely go with the Dragon. Um,
So fun.
but yeah, the Lich King, I
The
actually,
Lich King.
up until the final boss, I consider him the best one to use almost every time. Because the whole point is,
Interesting.
as you kill things, you gain more XP. Um,
Hmm.
and with how I play this game, I always do a gold run and then attack a boss, like when I was going through all the bosses. And so at that point, I've
Right.
cleared out a majority of the castle, or at least
So he's
all of
strong.
that section for that castle. So I'm going in with somebody that has a decent amount of health. Um, he's already strong.
Interesting.
He doesn't take enormous amount of damage. A lot of the bosses have kind of side enemies. I can kill those and gain more XP. And then I always attach runes that every time I kill something, it refreshes my health. And so I
Yeah,
get into
always.
this like loop of I am literally building my total every time I kill something,
Hmm.
and then every time I kill something, I'm refreshing that total as well. And so it got into this just fantastic, like, I have this just meaty guy going into any of these boss fights because he's ridiculously strong at that point. Um,
Yep.
and it also, because the whole point again is to get gold, every one of my runs then, I am incentivized to go through and find all the secrets, kill everything, because every little portrait or every little wolf or whatever I kill, that is making it so that it's easier when I eventually try to do my task.
See, that's awesome because I always would tell myself I would do those kind of runs with the Lich King or Queen character class, and then always would just be like, I'll just go to the boss now. So I never did enough to really build him up because I was impatient.
Right.
So that's why, kind of in a weird way, it never really landed with me. Like every once in a while, I would put in the time to really kind of grind him out.
Right.
But usually, when I do my boss runs, I wouldn't do a treasure run. It would be like, all right, we got to go to the boss.
Nah, man, you have to do the every time you have to go and do a full run of the whole castle because every time you're getting more gold so that if you do screw up on that boss, you just improved him.
You're still okay.
Yep.
I would just go until I would find my boss rooms, and then that gold was hopefully enough. And the
No,
treasures. I would definitely sidetrack for some treasure chests because
uh,
I would always try and find at least one or two fairies.
that's the great thing about the castle. I call it a Castlevania map. Um,
Hmm.
is I would find the boss room and like, all right, I will
And then
come
just keep
back
going.
here in
Yep.
10 to 15 minutes.
And with the teleport system being like, oh, I can go right in front of you.
Yep. And you can
Perfect.
technically pause at any time and go back to the beginning of the castle too, if you ever get into a
Hmm.
problem area. Which again, then it's super easy to get back to that room if you couldn't find a teleport area. Yeah, and so it makes it so each of my runs are very lengthy, but I'm always getting something out of it. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
no,
I
I
I
appreciate
wish
you
I wish.
being strategic with your people. I just come
Oh,
in with a tank and just it doesn't matter how much damage they do. I'm
see,
just gonna beat the crap out of them.
see, I like that a lot, and that's what's the reason why I was joking about it is that that is legitimately what I would tell myself I would do every time I had that character class, and I would just get so impatient and be like, "Let's just murder people, let's try," and then it just never would work, and then I would always die and be like, "All right, time to try a different class. Let's try the Archmage.
Yeah,
Maybe that'll work this time."
yeah. So that's I almost if I can, I always pick Lich. If I can't, I pick Barbarian. Um,
So you go tank, 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 tank.
yeah, because the unfortunate part about how the upgrade system works is you just need that gold. And while yes, you could still be learning
Staying
some
alive longer.
right, you could still be learning how this game works, or you could go in and you could be like a glass cannon and take out the boss.
Uh,
If it doesn't work,
that's
I didn't gain anything. And so that was the only bad thing for
totally.
me is in my mind I couldn't switch that off. And so by having as much health, by having kind of like that tankish character, it was a guarantee that I was achieving something because I would be able to
Right.
collect mass quantities of things.
It's funny because for that exact reason is why I love the Shinobi and the Hokage is that I would just blast through, and when I would do gold runs, I would still just blast through. It would just be quick
Hmm.
because it'd be like, okay, got to make sure you're not getting hit because you're not super strong, but you're one hitting almost everything you run across
Right.
just because you're stronger. So I just loved the ability, and since I would also do a leech life, I can't remember what the name of the rune is, but the one where you're getting a percentage of
Right.
the kill and health. Doing a ton of damage was this great kind of keep yourself alive system of all right, I could go nuts and go a little crazy, get a little too hyped up on coffee and jump around like like I have the ADHD trait within the game and kind of get caught in a crossfire because sometimes that's just inevitable. But that's okay because I'll kill 6 dudes and I'll gain all that health back all in one hit. So it allowed for this weird kind of hyperactive massacre tactic. And that's a lot of how I would get through this game, especially in hard spots, just being like, all right, just go for it. Jump around like crazy. And like you said at the beginning, super precise platforming. That's one
Yeah.
thing I got to say that this game really gets down. The platforming is really good.
Really,
Even
really
stuff
good.
like doing just the down attack to activate platforms, it shouldn't feel that good. Like they nailed the feel of this game. So it allowed for me to just be like, all right, I can change midair really easily. Let's go crazy. Jump around and hope nothing hits you.
Yeah. No,
And then
and
all of a sudden you kill everything and you're standing there like, I'm a monster. Let's keep going.
yeah. So you actually mentioned a really interesting thing. You had mentioned ADHD for the traits. So on top of every time you pick a class, there's possible traits that can go along with that, and they're very, very interesting, diverse list, I guess.
Okay. I know this is going to sound like I'm just, yeah, I brought up the list to read off some.
Okay. Go ahead.
Actually, so the first one that I just mentioned, ADHD.
Yep.
And so there will be a description beside these traits. It'll say, so energetic, you move faster. And the effect is your character moves 30% faster. That's a good one. That's one that you'd like. Then you also get random ones like electorophobia. Chickens freak you out. Now, just like the Castlevania games of old and a lot of other classics, food gives you health, specifically chicken legs, and sometimes they're dropped from statues, enemies, and all the rest of it. But if you have this specific trait where you're scared of chickens, sometimes instead of a chicken leg, a whole chicken shows up. Now, killing the chicken will give you that, that chicken leg you so desperately want, but when it first shows up, it freaks you out and it can even hurt you. And I once got killed by an effing chicken in this game. And I
That's
cannot tell you how infuriating it was to
it's
have
also
6 health.
super
No,
embarrassing, and you should probably not have told anybody that.
no, it's okay. Because it was legitimately right before a boss room. So I knew by hitting the statue, you'd get the chicken leg. And it's like, oh, I'm totally fine. And a freaking chicken shows up and it immediately hurts me. And I was like, are you serious, game?
Yeah,
That is one of the few times. And I wanted to be mad, but I just started laughing. Because it
and
was just so ridiculous. And it was so charming.
and
I
then
hate to say it. It was just great.
and that's the interesting thing is there's this chicken one's a really good one where it, like yes, it's technically bad for you, but for the most part, it's just funny.
Yeah, and
Um,
usually, actually, it never comes up. Like
right.
most of the times I had that trait, never. It's just a percentage chance that sometimes a chicken shows up,
Another
and it
fun
throws a
funny one
quick 2-second wrench.
is baldness, which
Oh
literally
yeah,
does not hurt you, but they put little things in where like whenever you enter the castle, it always says building. Instead, it'll say balding. You'll have no hair, but it doesn't really matter because typically you have a helmet on, but so it doesn't like you can't see it. But there's other ones that like they actually become a huge pain. We already mentioned like how important the map is. If you have Alzheimer's, you cannot see your map. Um,
nope.
the whole
If
game
you have
is kind of
CIP,
right.
your health is hidden from you. Yeah, yeah.
That was exactly what I was gonna go because like that can really screw you up because the whole point of like the
It's
whole
just a mental thing, and it screws you.
but you also
Yeah,
can't plan for it because you're like I think this has
yeah.
been going well. I'm going to go to the boss now, and you get
Oh, I had
there,
2 health.
yeah, and it's like oh well that didn't seem right. Okay, um, but yeah, like but there's other interesting ones. I can't remember which one it is. There is one where your feet are hurt, like your feet, like you can't step. Like typically there's
Oh yeah,
spikes
yeah.
that come up, and if you step on those, it gives you damage. One of them is
Oh, I know what I gotta find it for you. But yeah, explain it
you
because
can just walk on those spikes and they don't do any damage to you. And it's like that almost never pops up. When it does, it is fantastic.
PAD,
PD.
peripheral arterial disease, no foot pulse. Hero does not set off spike traps.
Yeah,
Oh no, that's the different one. That's the spike trap one, which is also great, by the way.
yeah.
Uh, which is the one?
Am I just thinking
Maybe
of
that is the
that?
same one. I think it is that one, but it also works on spikes, I believe.
Yeah.
Because the idea is you don't feel anything in your feet, so you don't get hurt.
But I as much
IBS is just goofy. You just fart sometimes.
yeah, I was gonna say, and that's I sometimes will just like, all right, I know I could probably try to pick like no foot pulse because that'll make this better, but I'm going to pick like something that's crazy, like I'm going to fart constantly, or I'm gonna have dyslexia so that I can't read anything that's said to me, or you go if you want to go super crazy, you go farsighted or nearsighted where everything's blurry.
Oh, those are so rough.
It's so hard, but then it's just, again, it's just one of those things like this is really fun.
Glaucoma, where everything's dark.
Yeah. It's just
Color
like
blindness makes it retro. I mean, I love it. One, I never knew what actually it did, and now this is the first time I've actually read what it is. Was gay.
which
I
is
just always thought that was just a funny thing, but apparently, what it does is it switches which statue will give you the chicken leg or the mana potion in the waypoint rooms that we were just talking about.
one
So
of the
depending on what you are, it switches it from a knight or the lady.
one of the things I
That's it.
always liked about that. I didn't know it switched the statues, but
Neither did I.
it comes from a time like this is a while ago, and one of the things I really like is the whole point of it is there's no practical effect because it doesn't matter if you're gay or not, you're
Oh,
still
totally.
a person, and that was one
It's
of the
it's
statements
it's
I
it's
always
really
really
goofy,
enjoyed.
smart little thing. It's yeah, the trait is gay. It's like, and all it is if you're a dude, it says you're a fan of the man. Okay. Or if you're a girl, it says you like ladies. You're like, yeah, okay, cool. That's it.
Yep,
That's the
that's it.
trait.
And that's actually one of the
That's all
best
it's
traits to have because then you don't have any
because there's
negative.
no negative.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep. Absolutely. The only other one that I hate playing with it, but it's really, really nice. So you can either be Giantism, which your guy's huge, which really, really sucks. It's nice to be able to hit
It's
everything,
easy to get hit.
but the whole point is dodging, and it's really hard to get around stuff. But if you're tiny, there's all these little like hidden rooms you can get to if you're tiny.
Yeah.
Which, like I said, I'm always
It's
going through and
great
trying
for a gold run.
to
Yeah.
collect everything. I'm always doing a gold run. I just might do something at the end as well. And so being tiny makes it so I can do that, and also because you're so small, much much harder for you to get hit.
Oh yeah.
And so I have a little tank of a character then that's impossible to hit, has an enormous amount of health, and it's like I'm golden. I this will be a good run.
Like, nothing bad will ever happen. We're good. But no, I got to say, I love dwarfism. It's weird. Like, you, I mean, I know everything is a friggin' gold run for you, so it's a little different. But that is one of the few classes that I would always pick.
Hmm.
But the short swing, because you're smaller,
Right.
you have shorter reach. Uh, I would never 100% recalibrate for that swing distance, and that's usually what would always kill me.
Well,
So it'd be great for those gold runs, but I would always die with dwarfism because there's always that moment of like, and I've got you, totally missed, and I'm dead.
so one of the
Damn
things
it.
though that I think is really nice about this game is so you're always going into a new room, and that's basically kind of like a combat chamber. Like it is, you are going to have to engage with something.
Yeah,
But the great
some
thing
kind
is,
of mix of platforming and enemies.
you never actually have to engage them. And so a lot of
You just
times when
jump
I would
around.
do that, yeah, I would just skip around. And so because of how you kind of cover the map, you have to kind of crisscross rooms. You go through and you clear whatever's in your way, but for the most part avoid everything. And when you come back, you clear whatever's in your way, but avoid everything else. And as you do that, you eventually clear out all these rooms. But whereas like if I am a normal character, I go through, I clear a room. I move on to the next
Yeah,
room.
see,
I
that's
clear
exactly,
it.
totally.
But I would definitely change how I play with dwarfism because it like it is much harder to fight these enemies, or maybe I'd rely on my magic more. And I would just kind of skip through, avoid everything because nobody can hit me because I'm so small. And the controls are tight enough that I can kind of move around, and then I would just move on, and then I'd come back and I'd move on, and in some regards it makes the gold run less effective because there absolutely are enemies that I miss, but I can get. I'm kind of doing like the risk reward, and I'm assuming that by going to those hidden areas, I'm going to get more money.
Yeah, and usually that's the case.
Yeah. So
How
I
about bosses? Did you, seeing as this was your first time actually doing it, because the bosses are rough.
I've beaten all the
I've
bosses
never been
before.
able to beat. No, I know, but I mean, like, it was the first time actually doing the final boss, though, I thought.
I fought the final boss just to see it, but I purposely made sure I
Oh,
never
I
won
see.
because for the
Okay.
trophies, it's easier to beat the remix bosses in your first life, like your first before you go to New Game Plus.
Yeah.
And
Have
so
you been able to do that? Because I have not defeated a single boss remixed.
I believe I've beaten one. I believe I beat Alexander, the big skull dude.
Yeah, Skull.
Yeah. Um, it was
Because
not
they're hard.
enjoyable.
I gotta say, the bosses, I mean, even let alone the remixes, which are nutso. And they went all out and were like, hey, you want more difficulty? Here you go. You're welcome. But those bosses are, I was always shocked again to that idea of learning what they're gonna do and all the rest of it. How simple and straightforward the bosses were,
Right.
but with a good difficulty curve. Like I never was able to, except for Kadir. I remember the first time the eyeball. The first time I almost beat him. Like I almost got to one shot him, and I was like,
Mm.
oh, okay, this is gonna be easy. And of course, it then took 12 more tries.
Isn't that how it always works? Yeah.
Oh, always, always. You're like, I'm so confident. Oh yeah, I just gotta play it like a shmup, dodge the eyeball. But then I would always get cute and just be like, no, maybe I'll sneak in an extra hit. And it wasn't again until I did what I did that first run of just no, play it like a shmup. Just focus, stare at your guy. Don't stare at the boss. Stare at your pixelated dude. Have him dodge everything. And if you're close enough, go for a swing.
Yeah. And that's
Just play like that.
one of the crappy things is like the differences between how you and I play. Um, your playstyle and the classes you pick and are more comfortable with actually work much better against the remix bosses because they do so much damage. It's much
Yeah,
better to kind of go the glass cannon
dodge.
approach that
Yeah.
you're doing, whereas for the record, I am dodging.
Oh, I
uh,
know.
but like it matters
But it's
less,
more about forgiveness. There's forgiveness to it.
right? And so I kind of when I started moving to those remix bosses, I had to kind of retrain how I did those, whereas it'd be much more in line with how you were already playing the game.
I like to imagine that a scribe somewhere was like, he is dodging. Okay, we're
Yep.
good.
Yeah. So all those comments was like, Josh is so
Wait,
bad at games.
you're
He doesn't.
terrible.
He doesn't even know how to dodge. Or the last story, he didn't even know how to block in the game. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Hey, at least you got through it.
Yeah, I beat the game without ever blocking. I think that's
That says
impressive in
something about the
itself.
game. That was one of the things I took away from that story. Is yes, it's impressive. It also tells me clearly not a necessary mechanic in a game.
Apparently not, or at least not for me.
So maybe not maybe for the hardcore. That's it, Josh. You're just hardcore.
Oh,
You
thanks.
need to create more challenge.
Thanks.
It's
Yeah,
not challenging
it
enough.
was too easy.
The world the world does not meet the level of Josh. So Josh needs to bring the world up to Josh. It's okay.
I
I
like
get
the
it.
sound of that. Um,
As long as you can convince your kid that as he's growing up, you're good.
well, that's the great thing is he has to listen to everything I say, right? That's how that works.
I know. You got about like a good 6, 7 years of just you being your own child's mini god.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was your favorite boss?
Uh, this is gonna be so lame. It was Kadir. I think it was that first one because the gatekeeper, the
Hmm.
eyeball. I just basically because it set the tone
Hmm.
for everything else,
Hmm.
and I think because the first two bosses, Kadir and Alexander, took me the longest to get through. Like I would say, oh no, that's not true. Once I beat Kadir, I actually beat Alexander quickly, and then there was a little bit of a wall of okay, now I need to get better before I can fight the next two bosses. So it kind of came in two halves for me. There was clearing out the castle and the forest. I was able to do not early, but early-ish. I'd say I was like level 30, 40. And then I didn't beat the game until I was way higher level than that. And by the way, your level is determined by each upgrade in town
Yeah.
with all the people. That counts as a level. So your level can get very high, and it feels weird, but it's just how it calculates. But I really loved how Kadir kind of again it sets the tone of okay, you've gotten through everything in this castle so far. You've got a feel for what the monsters are. This is what the bosses will be like.
Yeah.
It's going to be harder. It's going to be much crazier on screen than you're used to. This is just, and what's good about Kadir is it's very simple in comparison. It's again, yes, it's the shmup feel, but it's gentle. I think he's the most likely for people who've played a lot of games to actually kill in one go. I know some friends who've done that. He's a little bit easier to get the tells on the first run around, but once you beat him, I think it's a great. It really just you understand what you're in for, even if it's not, if it's still going to be hard.
Kadir comes at
Uh,
a nice
and
time
yeah,
where you start to think you're very good at the game.
oh yeah, then he
And
smacks him in the face.
Kadir, and also if you accidentally go in the darkness too early in the game,
Ooh,
both of them are a pleasant
ooh.
reminder of like this game is much harder than you assumed it was.
Yeah, good call. Because I made that. I think everyone probably does the darkness accidentally because you're exploring.
And it's
You're like,
very
oh, a
easy
new
to go
zone.
down.
So it's a totally new zone. I should check. Oh, I died in a hit.
Yep. Yeah,
So I was
there's
at full health.
and I'm used to these little spellcaster mage dudes, and why is
Oh no,
this
spells
one
are
10
different.
times the size of a normal one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would I
That's a
respect
very
that.
good call.
I respect that about Kadir. It was really nice because it is just talking about scale. You're used to things that are kind of close to your size, or at least
Oh yeah, and now there's the
in the
screen
range of you.
controlling. I
Right. But I would have to go with Alexander. Although Kadir
Mhm.
was
It's my
absolutely
number two. It's my number
probably
two.
the
Yeah.
most difficult boss next to like obviously the final boss is the hardest, but Kadir
Yeah.
was the because you're just not to that point. And with how I was playing the game, at some point I was like, I actually think I did one shot both Ponce de Leon and Herodotus
Nice.
because there's just
Herodotus.
but that
Herodotus.
Herodotus. Okay,
Yeah. Some nerd is gonna get on you. He's a classic scholar, or
if
she
you
will be a
guys
classic
have
scholar.
listened to this long enough, you understand that I can't say anything
I'm
I
just trying to
can't
help you.
pronounce. No, I appreciate it.
It's inevitable that someone's gonna be like, idiot.
That's also why probably Alexander's my favorite because I can pronounce it. No, it was one of those things that like just with how I run it, like I crazy skills, crazy everything by that point. And I'm unlocking. I think I have all the armor and the weapons already unlocked. Like I
Hmm.
because that's what I'm doing. I'm going through every ounce of that map every time and I'm filling it.
Yep.
Um, but whereas Kadir was a very thin, tall map, I liked that Alexander was it was a very
Oh,
big
it's
map.
huge. Yeah, that's true. That
And
arena is great.
right. And then there's not only like Kadir you are dodging like what he is shooting at you and try not to run into a ginormous eyeball, which isn't terribly difficult. Alexander's moving around, he's shooting stuff at you, but then there's all the little skulls around it, and so
Yeah,
it's
I mean
more
it's yeah.
frantic because you have to avoid all of that. The positive of that
As
is
well as his giant attacks.
right. The positive of that is with it sounds like how you do your runes as well. I'm getting back health by killing those.
Yeah,
But then it's much more of a cat and mouse fight for me.
which is kind of awesome because again, to me, that just shows how the game scales so well.
Hmm.
Because Kadir is you are worried about an eyeball. It's giant. It fills up the screen. Survive.
Yep.
Now they open up the arena and go, okay, we're going to give you a lot more space, but now we're going to give you a lot more crap to dodge.
Yeah.
Have fun.
And that's they kind of because I think with Ponce de Leon they then all of a sudden because I don't remember Alexander having spikes that you had to avoid as well. So the nice thing is you could
No, but
always
then the
like
traps, yeah.
you could always set up and be like, I am going to stay here. I'm going to kill some stuff, clear some space, and I'm going to move on. And as you move on to the bosses, they slowly like you need to move on, but always be in constant motion because there's spikes or traps or something
Yep.
shooting at you from another angle.
Yeah,
And
Ponce is chasing you,
right,
and then there's other crap
right, and
that
that's
it's not a question of being able to slay. It's just straight up dodge it because you will die.
right, and you brought up a really good point. Is they have nice progression with that of you're in a contained space. You have lots of space, but there's other stuff to contend with. Now there's still lots of space, but there's you're being chased. There's things that you have to avoid. And if I remember correctly, I'm not even gonna try his last name. The last boss, I think, is a smaller space again. And if I know it's dark,
Yes,
so it's hard to see where you're going as well.
but I think it's more your standard. You have your one room, jump at each other and kill each other.
Right. And then
Wow.
you,
But yeah, in all fairness, yeah, did not play it, Johannes on this most recent run. I was really doing just a lot of explore the world again, get used to the traits. So I
right.
can't remember that fight.
And then it's very interesting to go from that because then you fight the final boss, and it's like, yo, this is a dude just like me.
Yep.
And then obviously there's newer stages after that because you can't
Yeah,
have
of
a
course.
final boss without multiple.
Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, I think you kind of hit it perfectly when you said there's just a nice progression to the game.
And I mean, we talked about it at the beginning. This is well, I definitely was slobbing on this game a little much, but it is especially for roguelikes and this genre. I think it is just all around one of the more impeccably designed.
Mhm.
It's not perfect. It's definitely not. There are definitely times where rooms are generated and you're like, come on, algorithm. That's not a thing I should be doing right now. Especially for some of those. You can't get injured if you want this chest rooms. It's like no one is going to do this room.
Yeah, the box is
This
inside,
room
closed in
screams
spikes. Like, yeah,
Yes. So every once in a while, you get screwed. And sometimes you get screwed with the traits you're given and the classes available to you. It's not always perfect. But in terms of how everything feels, how it progresses, going from the castle to the forest, and it's just enough of a difficulty spike. But when you first enter the forest, for most people, I know that there are those who can one-shot everything, and they're way under-leveled for a lot of this. But the progression of once you finally reach the forest, after you've killed Kadir, it's just a little bit harder, but it's not soul-crushing. So it doesn't feel like you have to grind. You will, because that's how the game works, but it doesn't feel like it's required.
yeah,
And then you get to Alexander, and then you deal with that. But then once you go to Maya and the darkness, that's when, to me, it starts to feel like, oh no. Now it's harder.
yeah,
Okay, now I really need to start relearning things. And that constant just little twitches, little tweaks, constant little changes. Like you said, it could be the same kind of floating mage dude, but now his spell or her spell is humongous and takes up half the screen instead of before where it was a tiny fireball. So you're like, oh, I know how to dodge the fireball. Oh, well, I'm still dodging that same fireball. It's just 5 times bigger.
right,
Okay.
right,
And at the end of the day, if you're failing miserably, you're probably still upgrading your character. So there's not a loss in that sense of, again, the wasted time. It's a very smart game.
yeah,
it got the reward balance down so right, and that's usually the hardest part with a roguelike.
Yeah, it's
One good
intelligently
one,
designed.
yeah, one good one that finally, so you joked before, reached a real platform, so now I'll play it. Uh, was Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta get your dance on.
Have you played it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I like it. Different, makes me need to think in a completely different way. Can't rush stuff because you have to keep with the rhythm. But again, it has a good enough system of, hey, you failed. This run didn't go so well, but you can buy some stuff before your next run, and that's going to be in the world for you now. Progress.
And I think that's kind of like a perfect kind of summary of Rogue Legacy as a whole.
Play it. Basically, what we're saying is just play it.
Yeah, you should have played it
Support
already.
store.
Um,
If you didn't, go buy it. It's probably not that expensive, and if you have a Sony console, it's cross buy.
and it
So
was possibly, if you were good about it, it was on PS Plus like 2 years ago.
it
So you
was
might
on
already
PS
have
Plus.
it. But yeah, it is a fantastic game. It is a really good kind of dip your toe into roguelikes, because you
Yeah,
do have that
it's a
loop
great
of
first,
you're not starting from
and it's not
scratch
too
always.
easy. It's not too easy. You're not going to feel like, okay, they're really dragging me along. It's a difficult game, but it just lets you tackle it in so many ways.
So play it. And
Yeah,
if you've
basically,
already
just
played it, play it again.
yeah, exactly. Earn them trophies, earn them achievements, get
Um,
that sweet sweet loot.
get good. Yeah.
Get good. Moral of the story: Retro's motto going forward. Our mantra: get good.
But yeah, so that's gonna do it for us. Talking about Rogue Legacy. You can expect really good things coming from us. We have, although I don't have the full schedule, we have some really cool bonus encounters coming up. And then also the team will be playing through Shadow Hearts very, very shortly. So there'll be episodes of that coming out, which
Yeah,
will be a fun podcast to listen to. So get very, very
yeah.
excited.
A lot of people who know that series very well playing that game.
Yeah. So, but yeah, in the meantime, as always, you can go to rpgfan.com, go to our boards, you can post your thoughts there, or you can send us emails at retro@rpgfan.com. And we'd super appreciate it if you went on to iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast and give us a review and a comment. That helps us out tremendously. But in the meantime, that's going to do it
Yes,
for us
please,
here.
please.
We really appreciate you listening. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful day.